I guess we need an intro.
Let's go.
I guess we need an intro.
Let's go.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Steve.
You're already more confident on the microphone.
Like jumping in there before you even asked me to.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to Extrapreneur 360. This is a podcast that I'm creating. Simone's here to help me do it. She's been gracious and kind enough to be my partner in the first episodes and first few seasons of it, just so that I'm not some wacko talking shit to myself all day long. It's a podcast about my journey over the last couple of years and where I've been and where I'm going. My journey of taking risks, exiting corporate and going into the world of becoming an entrepreneur and living an entrepreneurial life and removing myself from comfort zone and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and mindset shifts and all that shit. So if you haven't listened to episode 1, I would encourage you to go do that. Episode 1, 2, 3. Listen to all the episodes. Give us the support. And today I wanted to share. So this is like kind of season 2 of the podcast, and delving into the world of overcoming adversity, which I think is so and building resilience, really, because I think when I think about the way the world is now, everybody's an expert at resilience and overcoming adversity. We all have had our shit, and I think my shit is I feel is a little bit unique. But I think I love telling the story also because a lot of people, when I tell the story, their jaws drop and they're like, oh my God, man, what the hell? And I'm like, it's always so interesting to me because to them it's such a hectic story, but to me it's such a, you know, it's just what happened in my life.
Just part of your life.
Yeah.
You just got on and dealt with it.
Yeah. And I almost get challenged by people when I tell the story that I should make a bigger deal about it because it was so hectic. And but as you were just saying, we were just talking before we started about being held up in a home, which is something else that happened to me. And Simone said, "Oh, that happened to you guys. That should be in this season as well." And I looked at it, I was like, "Shit, I haven't even considered that for 1 second," because I said to her as a joke, I said, and it's not so funny, but let's laugh at it anyway. I said to her, being held up in your home is a South African rite of passage, so like it's not that big a deal, but.
And also, I think next to everything else that you've had to go through, it's kind of...
It's small fries, it's small potatoes. So like
which puts everything else into perspective.
Totally.
But when you look at just this,
exactly.
it's enormous on its own.
Right. And it's actually a part of this conversation today because... So the story is, I mean... I don't really agree that it's such a hectic story, but it is hectic, and I think in most people's lives because they don't generally deal with this kind of stuff. Because it's all about perspective, as Simone said. And you all have your shits, and you can't compare someone else's shit. There's an awesome proverb or story that I love about if God came down to earth and said, everybody put your shits and your problems and your crap onto the table, and you're going to choose which shits and problems and crap you want to take off the table. Everyone would choose their own stuff. You would never choose someone else's shit, and that's the bottom line. And I think that's why I don't think this is such a hectic story or such a... but it's definitely been pivotal to who I am as a person. So because it's had a massive impact on my outlook, and I've carried it with me all my life. You know, it's also why I feel like I am the positive person that I am. That comes later in this season as well, talking about positivity and the positive mindset. So the bottom line is, the hecticness that happened was when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, cancerous brain tumor, and very fortunate enough to have it removed. Because the position of my head wasn't allowed for it to be removed, and then I had a year of chemotherapy and radiation, and you know, I became what they call a survivor of childhood cancer after that for many years, and I guess I'm still a survivor if you want to be technical, but I was very involved with the survivor group and like other kids who had survived and all that. I think it's super interesting because childhood cancer in particular, as I said, most people are never touched by it, and please God, you never are touched by it. And unfortunately, we all touched by cancer later on in life, but childhood cancer is particularly rare.
And devastating.
It is devastating, yeah, and especially obviously for the family and for my family in particular, but, well, not in my family in particular, but for my parents in particular, and for my brother and sister. But I think what's so interesting about childhood cancer is, what I learned about it is, the toughest little shits you'll ever meet are childhood cancer victims,
Survivors.
or even not even survivors. Shame. The sad thing is most a lot of them don't survive. But the truth is that I don't know what the word
The
is.
toughest individuals.
Yeah, the toughest shits
The
you'll ever meet.
hardiest,
Yeah, are
yeah.
these little things.
Resilient.
Exactly, and I was very old when it happened by the standards of childhood cancer. I was 12 years old, which is borderline teen, obviously, and borderline adulthood. Even at the time, there was a conversation about should I be in the adult ward or in the children's ward. And I'm grateful as hell that I was put into the children's ward because I was treated like a kid, which I needed because I had a massive phobia of needles, and then this obviously didn't help me much with that. But I think one of the biggest lessons of overcoming adversity when it comes to childhood cancer was the power of ignorance, and I think it's a lesson that I learned early on that I don't think a lot of adults really appreciate. When you get diagnosed by childhood cancer, I was at an age, I was 12 years old, so I was old enough to understand that this was not good news, and I was old enough to understand that this was potentially deadly. But I was also young enough to still have the mindset of a child who goes, okay, so I got sick, so let's just have the operation and get through
Can
the
I go outside now?
Exactly. And that's why these kids are so tough, is because they have this mentality of, I don't really appreciate, I'm ignorant to how deadly this is.
But kids don't understand
Yeah.
real consequences.
No, 100%. And I think it was highlighted to me by one of the nurses who once said to me, they were like, when I had my operation, and they, thank God they were able to remove the thing. Like, they found it one day and the next day I was having the op. They were able to remove it, and about 3 or 4 days later I was ready to go get out of bed. And I remember one of the nurses saying to me, dude, like, are you know, like, it's crazy that you're ready to go so soon, and like, get up and get out of here, because if you were an adult, you would be staying in here for another week. You'd want to stay on your back and like chill in the hospital. And I'll never forget that, thinking, like, that really drove home to me about how ignorance is bliss. Because as a kid, as you say, I wanted to go outside and play. I was done with this. I was like, let's just move on with life. Whereas as an adult, we tend to take any opportunity we can to get a break and like take some time off and go, hey, this is actually not this.
Just to slow down.
Yeah, and it's hard because adulting is hard, and I feel in a way like becoming an adult ruins us, because we learn about limitation. We learn about what's
It's
impossible.
no longer the innocence
Yeah.
of a child.
Totally.
It's the same as going on a roller coaster ride. Like, you don't know the consequences.
Yeah.
You don't have the
Yeah.
fear of the heights
Yeah.
or the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, and I think even in that example, like, if you do go on a roller coaster and God forbid something goes wrong on the roller coaster and you walk away and you're like, as a kid, you would never put it down to, oh, roller coasters are unsafe. You'd be like, oh, that was just bad luck. Let's just go on another roller.
You'd probably be so excited about what happened to you.
Share it with your mates.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting, like, as I say, it's like, having that, as we become adults, we tend to become so jaded and so cynical. And when I was thinking about like how to put this in perspective in terms of overcoming adversity and like building resilience, one of the things that really dawned on me was, when you're a kid, you've got this superpower, and all kids have it, of anything's possible and nothing bad. This is not bad news.
There's
this is
no
just
can't
yeah.
or
There's
don't.
no
Yeah,
impossible.
nothing.
Anything's possible, but when you're at that age, you lack the resources and the opportunity to do something with that. So you don't have any money, and you don't have the brains necessary to make good decisions. So you've got the superpower, but you can't really do anything with the superpower. You can just be a kid, and adults will look at you and go, oh, he's so sweet. He doesn't really understand that this is really dangerous, or that he shouldn't be doing that. And then as we get older, we start to get more resources to at our disposal, and they become more abundant. Like, we make some money, and we've got the opportunity, and we make friends, and we introduce to new people. But our superpower starts to fade away as that happens. So we start to become more cynical. We start to be like, yeah, I really like that girl, but I'm no longer a kid who just believes anything's possible, and she's way out of my league, so I'm just not going to pursue it.
But also, I think it's society as well, because you look at like artists, they often talk about when kids draw. Nobody's told them they can't do that,
it's a great
or that a cat doesn't look like that. You know, so
cat's
you
not
don't.
blue.
Yeah, so you're not limited by society's.
Yeah, we don't. That's the ignorance, and that ignorance is a superpower. It's so wonderful to see that, and I guess that's kind of what we see when you see people, adults who are on the autism spectrum, or who are on a spectrum of some kind. I don't know how that I probably should because I did my honors in psychology, but I've forgotten. But you see these neurodivergent people and they're adults, but they haven't grown up. So now they've got a lot more resources because they maybe got support, they've got families who are looking after them, so they've got the resource to do stuff. But nobody's told them that anything's impossible, so they're still living as a 30-year-old adult going, dude, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Just it's such a wonderful way to look at the world, and such a cynical way to look at the world when you don't have that anymore. So I don't know. Sorry for us adults. I mean, it's something that really, like, as I say, like, kind of,
Unfortunately, growing up.
yeah, it sucks. And that's, as I say, bring it back to the cancer, is like, that's why kids in general are just so amazing, but cancer kids in particular, they get told that they've got this horrible disease, but they don't actually appreciate how dangerous it is, or that their life.
And as a adult, having survived it, looking back to when you were a kid, how do you see it now?
I still don't. Look, I fully appreciate. I think as an adult, I appreciate what my parents were going through, because they were adults. So they were being told that their 12-year-old son had a deadly cancer tumor and could die. So their son's going, yeah, okay, fuck it. Can we get this sorted so I can go back to school? But they were really, so I appreciate that the adults in my life weren't seeing it in the bright, starry way that I was seeing it. But what I did discover as well was my attitude towards it, my positivity towards it, carried them through. They were like, dude, he's not even scared, and he's not even crying, and he's not even worried about this. If he maintains this positive attitude, we'll all be okay. Something deep in them, I could see it affected them. And it affected my brother and my sister. So and it set the standard, I think, for the rest of what was coming in my family, all the other shit that we had to go through, which will come in future episodes. Stay tuned. We're not done yet. But it was, so I think looking back, I still don't, I appreciate it was deadly, but would I have done anything different? No. Would I have started stressing as a 12-year-old kid and gone, oh my God, I could die now? No, I would have just carried on with life, and it would have been the same. So that was the one thing. The other thing that I think that I learned, one of the biggest lessons about facing mortality and at such a young age and building resilience and all that, was this understanding that it could always be worse. And this was a crazy one because when I got sick, as I said, I was a bit older, and there were 2 or 3 other kids in the ward that were the same age as me, like 11, 12. And they became my mates because you've all got cancer, whether you like it or not, these are your friends now. And so we were a bit older, and I was old enough to appreciate, like, one time I'll never forget being introduced to a little kid and meeting a kid in the ward. And the ward is the Chalk ward, by the way, at Joburg Gens, the most phenomenal, most happy, most hopeful place you'll ever go to, despite the fact that everyone's dying. And it's not good news everywhere is bad news, but it's just still the most beautiful place. I met a kid there who had this massive tumor behind his eye. He was like maybe 2 years old, 3 years old, massive tumor behind his eye, and his whole head was swollen and all that. And I'll never forget, like, realizing in that moment, like, sitting there feeling sorry for myself, going, fuck, this is not great. I have to miss school, and I have to be here for 3 days at a time, and then they keep sticking me with needles and all this stuff. I was feeling really sorry for myself. And I met this other kid, and I was like, Jesus Christ, life could be so much worse.
I want my own shit, thanks.
Life could be so much worse. Like, this kid they can't even remove his tumor. Like, it's in such a place that they can't even take it out. What chance does he have? Like, he's got such a little chance of surviving and all these. And it was like, it became this whole thing of just be grateful for what you've got, and then slowly those other 2 kids that I became mates with, like, losing both of them to cancer, like, over the year that I was having chemo, these guys who are like, oh, yeah, we're all doing good and we're going to make it. And then you come back next time and one of them's gone, and you're like, fuck, it's just good. He's just dead. And it's like, like realizing that at least I'm not dead, kind of thing. And that at such a young age, it really does impact you, and it gives you such a perspective that you do appreciate it now. So there was a beautiful example that why perspective, and you mentioned perspective, it's all about perspective. When we started, you were saying something about perspective. For me, perspective really hit home many years later. I was probably about 18, 19 years old at this stage. So my cancer was well and truly over, and I was, thank God, fine and all that. And we were training for a cycling marathon, and I got knocked off the bike by a car, and I landed up falling on my wrist. So off we went. My dad took me that afternoon or whatever to the emergency ward to go get an x-ray because it was ANA. And we were sitting there in the emergency room, and there was this young family sitting there with this little kid who had obviously, like, hurt his leg or something, and they were waiting to be seen by the doctor. And they were broken. The mother was broken, the father was broken, the kid was broken. It was just the most. And you could see that the injury was not life-threatening. It was just a broken leg or something. And I remember my dad and I turning to each other, just having a conversation about Jesus. It's so interesting perspective. Like, here we are sitting with basically the same thing as these guys. And we just fine with it because we've had so much other shit that we haven't dealt with, that we've had to deal with, that a broken arm is like, who cares? But to this family, this is their brain tumor and their cancer. And I think it was such a beautiful moment because it made me realize, like, just to be so appreciative, even though it was cancer, to just be so appreciative that I'd gone through something like that could allow me to go through the rest of my life with a perspective that you really need to send me a lot of shit in order for it to impact me and make me and take me down. And everybody's got their cancer, their brain tumor in their life. And you're not allowed to judge them for being broken at it. Like, we didn't sit there judging this family going, oh, you guys, man, it's just a broken leg, get over it. You don't even know it. Because for them, this was their shit.
So have you heard the story, and it's not my story, but I can't remember who said it. They said that you're only given what you can deal with.
100%.
So that's why when you get a broken nail, you must cry like a baby. So that
I know the second part of the story is great.
So that you're not given anything worse.
That's unbelievable.
Because the broken nail is like
the
ultimate of what you can deal with.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. I've heard the first part of the story, and I fully agree with that.
Yes.
I fully agree with that because, and like, that was another lesson. I mean, obviously my family was one of the incidences in my family's life that made my dad more religious was my cancer. And because the community gathers around and, like, really is there for you, and they propping you up. And I remember my dad saying that kind of thing, you know, like, God only gives you what you can handle, what you can handle. So he's given us this, so we must be able to handle it. It's like, and it's logical in a kid's mind. For an adult, you become cynical. You're like, yeah, Brett, I'm not sure I can because my back's sore, and I don't know if I've got the finances, and you know, I don't. Like, we have all of these excuses which kids don't have.
Yeah.
So I guess the message here is go spend time with a cancer kid because you'll get a new perspective on what's shit and what's not.
It's a whole new outlook.
Yeah,
on just
totally.
Positivity.
And it's
just
great.
Gratefulness.
Yeah.
Or cry when you get a broken nail.
Or cry when what if you're a guy and you don't have long nails? Then you have to hope for a broken nail.
When you stump your toe.
Oh,
like
okay,
a baby.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, you know, I think the bottom line is one of the things that now that I'm older, you asked about, like, how do I look back on this time in my life when I had cancer, and how did it change my perspective, and in a way, what would I have done differently? What it did was it made me appreciate privilege a little bit, because I looked at the cancer, as I said, with this kid who had this broken arm and, like, what he was going through, and I'm like, shit, man, this family is going to go through this, and this is their cancer. I was privileged enough to be, at the age of 12, hit by a brain tumor. So that, and it was a privilege because it set the tone for the rest of my life that anything else that gets thrown at me is peanuts, because it's just not on that seriousness level. So it's allowed me to have this insanely, and I'll talk about this in a future episode I've got planned, because I do have a problem in that I'm overly positive about the world. I cannot see the negative in the world. It's a huge issue and it's led to a lot of problems in my life, but it's because of this. It's because I've had the privilege, and having that bad news made me tougher, made me more resilient. It made me go, dude, life's shit, and you're 12 years old, and this is about as bad as it gets. Like, you could die here. So anything else that comes along is going to be peanuts. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, be grateful for it. This privilege that you've had early on has allowed you to see the world in a different way. So, in my opinion, it's the reason on the opposite side of privilege why, when you have a wealthy person who's brought up in a wealthy home that's never wanted for anything, why they can't take what life throws at them when they need to deal with it. When they have to go out in the world, and and I've seen through, and we've all been with people who've got lots of money, got friends who've got it, and then you go traveling with them, and their luggage gets lost, and they just break apart.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing in the world. Or they we go to stay in a hostel, and the hostel's not a great hostel, and they have to all shit in the same bathroom. It's like, oh my God, I can't. Privilege, like, as far as I'm concerned, adversity breeds resilience, and privilege breeds weakness. You know, when you have this, the world give you everything on a platter. When the world really comes to you and says, no, now you've got to deal with stuff. So in a way, I mean, it's easy to say because I'm through it. I'm through my cancer, and I'm through the worst of it. But I'll forever be grateful for it because I see it as a privilege that I was lucky enough to have that, because it made me very resilient to adversity.
You were also very lucky with the outcome. You said
100%.
Others weren't.
Yeah. and being exposed to those bad stories of others who just weren't lucky enough made it so that I was able to appreciate even more. Like, dude, not only did you get this bad news now in your life, and like now you can set the tone for everything else, but you didn't lose your life, and you didn't lose an eye, or you didn't lose a limb. Like a lot of these kids, or you're not permanently scarred. I mean, I am scarred. I've got a scar in the back of my head, which always starts interesting conversations. But it's about just knowing that it could always be worse. And that's what that kid with a tumor in his eye told me. It's like, dude, be grateful for this, because you could be this kid and could always be worse. So stop bitching. And I guess that's the headline for this podcast, is stop bitching and go do it, kind of thing. It's like, stop complaining. Like, the world doesn't give a shit about your complaints. The world only cares if you go out there and actually show that you're ready to take it on. So stop being a bitch. Is the bottom line. Sim, that's all I have to say about that. So this has been confronting for me, I'll be honest. Like I said, is to go into such depth about it and to like put it out there publicly, not because I'm ashamed or embarrassed, but I think I still have friends that I've been close to for years who come to me and they're like, dude, what's that scar on the back of your head? And I'm like, bro, I had a brain tumor there. What? Did you? I'm like, yeah, but I'm fine now. Like 20, 30 years later. Yes. I'm good though.
Maybe is it that you don't want to be labelled? You don't want to be...
Well, I think that's a lot of the questions I can see. That's the other beautiful thing about it. And that's why I say I love telling the story, because for me, the story is not that hectic. But for the people who hear it, they're like,
well, it's not hectic now because it's 30 years on.
Right. But even when I was going through it, like a lot of people, I didn't find it that hectic back then. But slowly, as I told the story to people, I was like, Jesus, people don't, and you realize how few people are touched by childhood cancer or who have to deal with this shit. That it's actually, it's hard to for them to, and there's a lot of embarrassment. But I think there's a lot of embarrassment. They're ashamed and they're embarrassed. They're like, oh, dude, I'm sorry, I didn't need to talk about it. I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. I want to talk about it because it taught me a lot.
Maybe it was quite cathartic for you to talk about.
What I've just realized now, as you said that, is I can now point them to a podcast episode and say, dude, here, go listen to this. You want to know what happened to me? This is what happened to me. And you can hear the full story and like why I don't think it's a bad thing. But as you say, it's like I don't think.
But you also had a choice.
Yeah.
Like you had a choice to look at it in the way that you looked at it, or lie down and play victim.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting you say that, because I think what you've just said is very much an adult attitude. And I'll tell you what I mean is I agree with you. Looking back now, I had a choice. Could have done this or I could have done that. But when you're 12 years old and you've been diagnosed with cancer, you don't really have a choice, because you only see the world in one way.
Yeah, you don't know.
This is the ignorance
way.
part.
Yeah.
You're ignorant. You don't have a choice. We have a choice because we're adults and we go, fuck, okay. Brain tumor, childhood cancer, chemotherapy, we're going to have to go through all this. The choice is, I can either let this overwhelm me and take over, or I can fight it and stand up for myself. That's how we see the world. But when you're a kid, you only see the world in one way.
You're not even seeing the other dimension.
You only see it as, okay, I got sick, so let's get better, and then we go move on. I got primary school to get through, and then I got to go to high school. You don't see it that way. And I think that's the beautiful part about kids who are sick with, particularly childhood cancer kids, but I think just generally any kid who, you see these kids who've lost a limb or who have cerebral palsy or stuff like that, and you're like, we marvel at them, and you're like, dude, they're just doing what comes naturally to them. We should be congratulating them, and like, I'm not saying it's good that what's happened to them has happened to them. Obviously, it's not good. But children, man, they are the best in the world due to their superpower, due to their ignorance, and they don't see the negative. So I didn't have a choice. I know what you're saying though, is because we adults, we go, now.
But you didn't really.
Exactly. Now you and I
did what you knew to do.
100%. You just take it as it comes. And as a kid, taking it as it comes means just doing what comes naturally. Whereas as an adult, the sad thing is, as adults, you've seen it, I've seen it with friends, family, whatever it is, who get bad news and they let it own them. They let it identify who they are. and they never get over it, and it becomes their new identity, and it defines who they are, and they become that victim. Because I think the only real victims in the world are adults. Kids aren't victims. They don't see the world as, they don't feel hard done by when they get bad news. They don't, I mean, maybe
It's
the
just the way it is.
yeah, maybe the new generation's a little bit different. They love being victims. But I think we adults, we go, oh, this is such bad news. Why me? Oh, I have to sort this out. I have to do this, I have to do that. Whereas kids just go, oh, okay, this is happening to me. It's not happening to any of my mates.
They're more accepting.
Yeah. We could, if we could bottle that and sell it, we make a lot of money. I suppose.
Well, there's a business.
Thank you, Sim, for letting me get this out and be cathartic about it. I appreciate it.
Cool, Steve.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please give us a like, subscribe, HBO special, Help a Brother Out special, and we'll see you in the next one.